to the SciFi Diner Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Hertzog.
Good evening. I'm Miles P. McLaughlin.
I'm Chrissy Raffensperger.
And I'm Dave Sellers.
I'm ready to launch my first novel, which starts tomorrow, which is, so this will be out. By the time this comes out, that novel will be released. So.
Woohoo! And where can people find said novel, Scott?
Oh, yes. Well, really anywhere. You can obviously go to my website, scotthertzog.com, or you can go to the Zon. Obviously, there's places to find it there. I'm guessing you can probably order it also in Barnes & Noble, a bunch of other retailer websites as well. I'm sure you can get. I haven't checked, actually, but I know that the people that I'm using to distribute it do have avenues into those settings. So.
Now, are these physical copies or digital only?
The only copy that I don't have, that I have recorded that I don't have finished yet is the audiobook. So I have it hardbound, softbound, ebook.
But
yeah, it's been a
very fancy sprayed pages.
Oh, shit. So I looked into that, and the company I'm using to print doesn't have them. And I'm actually a little bit annoyed with the company I'm using to print, just slightly. So, I'm coming back into the U.S. in 2 days. And so I'm going to be shipping some of my books, especially U.S. orders, to my U.S. destinations from the U.S. It just makes sense. But they take 15 days to print these things, which is fine. It just seems long in today's world to have that much lead time. But sprayed edges, I looked at it. It's expensive to get done. And I couldn't find a retailer. A lot of them are like UK retailers, which you would think like Portugal, UK, like that's just a hop, skip, and a jump across the pond. But because of Brexit, England being no longer part of the EU, when I've had books shipped to Portugal from my publisher, I got a $10 tax, and I actually lost money on just buying the book at author rate and shipping it to me. So it looks like I'm probably going to release a second print edition that'll be just for my author copies through Amazon. I'm using Ingram Spark out of the UK, and those books that are coming from there are absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. They are, but they don't have anywhere in the EU. They don't have a publishing center yet, and so until that happens, I'm gonna have to get my author copies if I want them here in Portugal from Amazon. But that's just the way it is. But Miles and Dave and Chrissy, we've gone to the conventions for years, and we've made lots of good friends with people from Crazy 8 Press and a lot of the Star Trek authors. We've had many of them here on the SciFi Diner. It's one thing to sit down and interview an author and find out a little bit about where they come from, their legacy, the ideas that they pull within genre fiction. But it's a whole nother thing when you walk through and do it yourself. Like when you take that from the ground up and you're not working with one of the big 5 publishers, and you're looking at doing the independent route, which is totally fine. And there's a lot of very successful authors that do that. I taught English for years, as you guys know, 28 years of teaching. And I certainly, worked with a lot of students putting out their own work. But it's a whole nother thing to kind of go through the process yourself and a whole new learning atmosphere that you kind of work with. I'm just learning so much.
What does the distribution look like?
What do you mean by that?
You're working on physical copies, available to order online. Are you going to try to maybe go to one of these sci-fi cons and maybe promote try to sell some books at a con? I assume you're going to have available an online copy.
So right now, starting at midnight tonight, and I don't know if you'll be able to download the EPUB and begin reading right away. But you can buy the physical copies on Amazon. So I see it here. The ebook at least is available at this point on Barnes & Noble, and I'm sure that the others will be following that in just a little bit. So the way that goes, Miles, is I'm using Ingram Spark. They're again located out of the UK, their headquarters, but they have bases in the US and in Australia and maybe one other place. Once you upload it there and get it approved for their system, they take care of making sure that Amazon gets it, Barnes & Noble gets it, or wherever. I'm kind of hands off in it. The only thing that I control a little bit more is the ebook. And I just run that through Amazon's KDP or the Kindle distribution platform. So
what age would you say your book is appropriate for? Is it like only adults? Would you say like teens can read it, preteens?
you know what? There's nothing in, like, when I look at what comes into the school libraries these days, I think certainly you could find it in a high school library shelf. Definitely not middle school. And I would say probably stylistically, the way it's written, my target demographic is like 25 and up. And that's not so much because of content, but more because of the lyrical style that I tend to write in. And what I mean by that is I want my worlds to be immersive when you step into them. And so there is action, but there's a lot more depth to the world than just, if you're looking for like action every chapter, my book's not for you. I mean, there is action, and there's certainly tension that pushes each chapter forward, but it's definitely it's not just like action packed every chapter. So
I just wonder, because my mom frequently gets asked about, especially when she gets kids that are more advanced readers, what if this book is appropriate for their middle schooler or their high schooler, or those sorts of things. And so if I can just ask you, the author, hey, is this appropriate? Then I can just tell her. And then when she gets parents who want to get their kids stuff, I can be like, oh, this works.
Yeah, I mean, at the core, this book's a plague fantasy book. I mean, it kind of began, even though the story has its roots back to like 2007, the novel that I'm releasing had its core just on the heels of COVID. So the disease in my novel is not COVID in any shape or form, but it definitely there's plague fantasy, and they're kind of, stuck between the king. This has been going on for 5 years, and it's kind of reached a tipping point because there's a refugee cat crisis that's going on in his land. It's high fantasy. So there's elves, dwarves, and the kingdom of men. And the kingdom of men is housing all these elven refugees because the plague has decimated the elven land. And so you have these refugees colonies, and so you have the impact of the refugees on the kingdom of men. And then they built this kind of what they call the Scourge line, this line of watchmen that keeps anyone that is infected in the land of elves from crossing over into the land of men. That's like a tired line and slowly breaking down. And so the king has like a really hard decision. He says, I know that we can destroy this disease with fire. Some of his people have developed like this incendiary fire that explodes and impact and spreads, and like can destroy huge swaths of these infected people that are kind of trapped in the elven land. But in the middle of that, of course, there's this adventure story of this group of people that believe that there's potentially a cure for this disease. And that kind of frames out the novels. So you have this king who's trying to decide what's the best way to save his people, and he's leaning toward destroying this disease once and for all. And then you have this other group that's saying, maybe these people can be healed. And so this juxtaposition of these two groups is kind of what makes the novel interesting and pushes the story forward. Is it appropriate at a younger age? Yes, but there is some difficult decisions, a little bit of brutality, although it's not extremely gruesome, and certainly no adult content as far as there's no sex happening. It's not like, what do they call, romantasy novel. So.
Oh, that's boring as hell now.
I know, right. I'm sorry, Dave. I will cede just for
novel.
you.
No,
I want to hear about some elf getting nailed. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow, I'm in the wrong genre for this.
Mainly because I want to buy the audiobook and have to have Scott narrate that.
Right. I see that.
Yeah, your friends would like to know, because if you're narrating that, we're just gonna skip. Just tell us when it stops, okay?
Right.
I'm gonna promote the shit out of that.
You go to school and you tell all the teachers that you used to work with, you need to make sure, go to this part.
I'm gonna play it over the morning announcements.
There's no doubt. There's definitely a huge market for the romantasy novels. That's just not my
Good
thing as far as writing goes.
It's not my cup of tea to read typically, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Although having having a Mennonite write that kind of a scene would be money in the bank enough to see how this plays out.
How do you tell your mother not to read your book? She'd be like, no.
It's not for you. Anyway, sorry, Scott.
No. I've had some people say, well, are you writing characters that are like what they call morally gray, where they're not really, you can't tell whether they're good or bad. And I would say that the decisions that the king is forced into are decisions that if you were a king responsible for a kingdom, having to make a decision, do I believe in chance or do I take the more certain route? That as a king, I'd probably take what seems more certain for my people.
Well, and it goes to what is your ethical obligation? Is your ethical obligation to the people that you are king of, your kingdom, or is your ethical obligation to like this? What's your ethical obligation globally? We have, as a society, and we have determined that we do have an ethical obligation to refugees after World War II. That was something that the world came together and said, we believe that we do have ethical obligations, but that's not the world that you have. You have a medieval high fantasy world where you don't have that. So the question is that part of their ethics?
The refugee camps that are in the kingdom, like he certainly has made sure they've had provision. It's not like he is against them. It's just, what do they do with the land that they're exiled from? This is a real big question. There's this disease running loose, and do I destroy it and thus, we move on from this disease, or do we, it's this question, like, what are you willing to do in the name of fear? Like, what do you justify when you reduce people to a single word like infected? They're infected and they become faceless and nameless. When we reduce people to only one thing, it becomes easier to sacrifice them. And I think that that's kind of one of the questions this novel explores. When there seems to be only one certain course, where does hope play into that? These are the questions this novel really wrestles with. So there is a villain in the novel, but it's not necessarily any of the people making decisions. Like, they're just making the best decisions they can. That's a little bit the premise. Early reviews have been positive.
Well, I'm a very salty person, so I will.
Right. Yeah, you will have to give me your salty review of it.
I
would welcome, if you do read, I would love to hear your feedback on it. I will guarantee that it's not written by AI, just so you know. The whole AI conversation is interesting to me because I think, so many of the tools we use as writers, like spell check, Grammarly, and that sort of thing, utilize that as part of the framework. Like, I'm absolutely against, authors, quote unquote, that type in a prompt, ChatGPT or whatever, spits out a book and let's put this on Amazon. Like, I think that there's some problems with that.
There's huge problems with that.
I guess I'm a little bit less inclined, like if I'm doing research on like Google, right? And Google, like Gemini, summarizes research, that's happening all the time, right? And that's a little bit different when you're using it like to brainstorm or to maybe, saying, okay, how does a medieval stable work? And it, gives you that. It's a little bit different.
Or like, I could see if if you're writing in isolation, you're not near a large city, you're in the middle of, Utah or,
right.
Montana, and using it to like workshop your stuff of like, hey, can you tell me what's not working in this scene? What's weak? Like, not generate anything, just flag what's not working,
and then you fix it, and then you go and you go ahead and fix it, right? Then that's a little bit different. I know that Anthony Horowitz and there's been some others that have used generative AI kind of in that capacity. One of the fascinating things have been to watch in the publishing world is that publishers using AI to detect AI.
That is definitely, actually, they just passed something, I want to say in the EU, where if something is generated, it has to almost include a watermark to show that it is generated. And so for text AI, the watermark is actually like a statistical anomaly of words that are used and how they're used. So a human reading it wouldn't notice that it's been generated by AI, but another AI would notice. So like in pictures, movies, films, music, or whatever, there's some sort of like tag for that. And I know Claude has already implemented it. I don't know how the other AIs are going to respond, but in general, I think that we're going to start seeing invisible watermarks in AI generated things because the EU is such a large market, and it's just going to be the easiest thing for the companies, tech companies, to just comply across the board.
It's certainly an interesting discussion that's coming down the pike. And I get it. I see why it is. But I think the flip side is, like, at least on social media, there have been so many witch hunts. You have the M dash. Sorry, you are obviously generative AI, which is bogus, because on one hand, like, generative AI has all been trained on what? Literature? You mean, so in writing, so of course you do the best you can. If someone thinks your work is AI, more power to them. You can't prove a negative, right?
Well, yeah, and so people who know the English language really well, which I would expect an English teacher to do, is probably going to be more likely to get flagged as AI. I know I had a colleague, she is currently going into grad school, and she had a whole issue because they kept flagging her as AI, and she's like, my mother is an English teacher. What boggled her mind was she had already gone to this university as an undergrad. So they already had samples of her work pre-AI, knew her, and could have gone to her professors and been like, hey, is this her writing? But they just kept feeding it into the AI thing, and it kept getting flagged as AI. And she's just like, or you could go talk to a human that has seen my work and ask them if this is my work. Crazy, but here we are.
I think there's a little bit of a, I mean, this is like totally derailing a little bit, but there's a little bit of an ethical quandary that if a publisher gets your manuscript and feeds it into AI to determine whether AI produced it, now AI has your manuscript and we'll be using that as training, right? It's a catch-22, right?
Well, I have that question when people try and push AI for like even notes for therapy and things like that. And I'm just like, oh, it's HIPAA compliant. And I'm just like, in what world has these tech companies demonstrated that they can be trusted with sensitive data? Because thus far, that has not happened whatsoever. So you're telling me it's HIPAA compliant, but I just don't believe you. I just don't.
Yeah. You saw the big scandal here lately where I forget which one of these AI companies has been gathering and purchasing all of these books, rare books, all this stuff, destroying them, scanning them all in, feeding it to train this AI thing.
Right.
It's because there was a recent court case where authors were taking the AI to court, like the companies to court, and saying you can't steal our manuscripts. And then what they said was it's fair use if you have a physical copy of the book. So then the tech companies are now saying, okay, we're just going to get rare books that don't have an author, don't have basically anyone to protect them, and purchasing them en masse and cutting them up and quickly scanning them. Now, I want to say, I think Elon Musk, I think it's him, he's the one who instructed his AI company that they are not allowed to destroy the books while they're scanning the books. So right now they're just slicing off the spine, scanning them in, and destroying them.
We've opened the genie, right? The genie's out with AI. And we can regulate it. We can do what you're saying, put watermarks in the text or images, etc. But it's not like we're going to make it go away. Like, it's still going to be here. And I think that this is the future we're living in. And Miles, you just earlier this podcast, we were talking about the fact that, you dropped a, Voyager Coming Home that was done with AI, phenomenally done. You found it entertaining and you enjoyed it. And I think the issue right now, like generative AI putting out a book doesn't handle that real well. Expect that only to improve, however. At the end of the day, if you're a writer, write the best book you can And if it's good, it's not going to be overshadowed by AI because of that. Like I look at The Last King of Äncalë, my first, fantasy novel. It's like any first novel, right? You do the best you can. Are there things that 10 years from now I'll go back and look at it and say, oh yeah, I could have done this differently? Absolutely. But that's part of the growth process, right?
Exactly.
Right. So, I mean, in some ways I like novel 2 even better. I have a novel 2, that one's done. It's probably going to release in January. And then I began brainstorming novel 3. So it's just a matter of the process. And I like the stories, I like where they're headed. I like the investment in the characters. I like the ethical and moral dilemmas it brings. And, I'll keep writing. Someone likes it, great. If someone doesn't, great. But I'm excited about the process. I'm excited about the book release. So
I know when like synth orchestras were coming out, like people were worried about what that would mean for symphonies and things. And guess what? I went to see Weird Al in concert. He didn't have a synth orchestra behind him. He had an actual live band. So I think people value other humans doing things, especially in creative arts. So, right. And I know that art was really transformed with the invention of the photograph, because up until then, it was really more like trying to capture almost like photorealistic paintings. And then after the photograph, well, they couldn't do it better than a photograph. That is what it is. And so that birthed a whole new way of thinking about art as not just capturing a scene, but also making a statement, which is why you have, those modern artists who like have a square and it's like painted white, and then they have an artist statement and everyone's like, I'm confused why this is considered art. But
polar bear in a snowstorm.
Right. And so it's like that's kind of the push. And so I do wonder how AI doing things, I'm not gonna say better than humans, I'm just gonna say trying to mimic humanity, how that's going to push art in different directions, and even things like valuing lack of polish. I see people using filters a lot less on their photographs, and there's more like realism and less perfectionism. So it could actually be in the end, it could actually be really helpful for people's mental health.
So yeah, anyways, Last King of Äncalë out tomorrow, out by the time you hear this episode, I'm sure.